Let us discuss sentence anagram questions. If you have already seen paragraph anagram video, then it would be easier for you to follow the steps for sentence anagram questions. If not, I strongly recommend you to start with paragraph anagram session first, understand the techniques being followed there, and then you can come to sentence anagram questions, which would help you to understand the techniques much faster. When you look at the sentence anagram questions, you will understand sentence anagram and paragraph anagram questions are much similar. The only difference is in paragraph anagram questions, you are given a set of sentences in jumbled order, and in sentence anagram questions, you would understand parts of the sentences are in jumbled order and you need to find a proper sequence. So, to sum it up, anagram questions throw you questions in jumbled form and you would be asked to identify a proper sequence. Thereby, the reliable step for anagram questions is step 1 is to begin with answer choices. Step 2 is to gather clues from the segments that you would understand while we solve few questions. And step 3 is to read through the sequence that you have decided and ensure the sequence that you have chosen makes complete sense. That can be done much easily, and for you to answer questions on sentence anagrams quite confidently, the basic requirement is your reading skills. If you are good at reading skills, with average reading ability, you can really ace all questions on sentence anagram and paragraph anagram. So your ability to read is more than sufficient to answer these questions. One point which I like to highlight here is, compared to the other question types like sentence completion questions, we would hide the answer choices initially and then we would work with the question itself. For anagram questions, we will reverse the step. We would start with the answer choices, gather an idea and get into the question. So the techniques keep varying according to the question types, and I want you to observe these ideas and then practice more questions. Let's move on to the question now. Let's begin with this question. As I said, step 1 is to look at the answer choices, and as we do, we understand option A and option C begin with Q segment and the other two options B and D begin with P and S. You can get back into the question, have it read once. No criminal proceeding in any court during his term of office whatsoever shall be initiated or continued against the president or a governor. Now as you read it, we can say it for sure, segment R and segment S must be coherent. If you apply that clue on the options, we can easily eliminate option C and option D. There is just A and B remaining. With one more step further, continued against a president or a governor during his term of office. You have been already told in paragraph anagram itself, a pronoun should always follow a noun. So the word his is a pronoun here, and this must follow the noun. In that case, RSP should be the sequence. Thereby, we can eliminate option B and the right choice is option A. Next question, we will begin with the answer choices. Two options, option A and option C begin with Q and two other options begin with P. To gather a clue whether Q should begin or P should begin, you have to get back into the question. So let's start reading the question. Perhaps the most significant factor is a failure of planning and in the growth of all metropolitan crimes, governance in the urban sprawl, including crimes against the elderly. As you look closer, you can understand that Q and S must be coherent. In the growth of all metropolitan crimes, including crimes against the elderly. So Q and S must be coherent. you can look for the answer choices which have QS combination. We have option A and option B. The other two choices can be eliminated. As you read further, you will understand this P R followed by Q doesn't make complete sense. Therefore, we can eliminate B. The right choice is option A. Perhaps the most significant factor in the growth of all metropolitan crimes, including crimes against the elderly, is a failure of planning and governance in the urban sprawl. Let's look at the question. In this question, we have all the four segments occupying the initial position. So there isn't much a clue from the answer choices. We shall get into the question to derive a clue so that we can approach the answer faster. According to an engineer, might hit the market next year a newly developed air cooler system that employed in conventional room coolers, which is based on a principle radically different from. As you read, we can be very sure to say that QS make coherence or must be coherent. A newly developed air cooler system which is based on a principle radically different from. So we understand QS is a proper sequence applied on the options, and luckily you have only one option with QS, and thereby the right choice for this question is option C. Well, for this question we have two options beginning with R segment, and the other two options begin with S and Q respectively. Let's get into the question. Attempts at transporting other organs. This segment is not underlined or it hasn't given a name, which means that this throws a clue for us to identify the proper sequence. So as we read this, attempts at transplanting other organs such as the lungs or the liver should be the proper sequence. Even otherwise, if you read it, you would understand RS must be coherent. Move on to the answer choices. We have just only one answer choice with RS as the proper sequence. Thereby, the right answer for this question is option B. Attempts at transplanting other organs, such as the lungs or the liver, have been made, but that which most caught the public fancy was the heart transplant. So I like to re-emphasize the steps once again, since we have done few questions. There may be a chance that you may not revisit the steps. Step 1 is to begin with the answer choices. Step 2 is to gather clues from the segments. And step 3 is to read through the sequence, the choice that you have chosen, and to ensure the choice makes complete sense. This is slightly a challenging question because the sentence seems to be lengthier than the ones that we had previously. Don't panic. Go by the steps. Step 1 is to start with the answer choices, and here all the four choices begin with different segments, and thereby the clues together is less likely. Let's get into the sentence. Let's read it. After our schoolboys had won a well-contested hockey match, so that they might communicate the news of their victory to the headmaster, who is a keen sportsman, they came to school in high spirits and takes a very lively interest in school games. Yes, even while you read the sentence, you do agree that this sentence is quite challenging. But on the other hand, if you look for clues, there is a clue which is glaring in your eyes. Look at the P segment. So that they might communicate the news of their victory to the headmaster. In fact, the non-underlined segment of this question, after our schoolboys had won a well-contested hockey match, schoolboys, the corresponding pronouns would be plural. They, their, they, everything. So, there's just only one segment which has a singular form. Is a keen sportsman, which should refer to the headmaster. That's a clue. Thereby, we can be very sure to say that PQ must be coherent because the headmaster singular, who is a keen sportsman, P and Q must be coherent because the other segments include plural form they or there that refers to the schoolboys. The task becomes simpler now. Immediately look for options with PQ and there's only one. The right choice is option C. RPQS. Just read through the sequence to check whether the segment makes complete sense. After our schoolboys had won a well-contested hockey match, they came to school in high spirits so that they might communicate the news of the victory to the headmaster, who's a keen sportsman and takes a very lively interest in school games. In fact, the verb takes also provides a clue that the preceding noun should be singular. Thereby, we can be doubly sure the answer that we have chosen is right. This question is much simpler. The exhibition committee has been making efforts. That's how it has to be. You have subject, next it should be verb. Thereby we can be very sure yes, R must be the proper sequence. And as we apply, option C and D get eliminated. We are left with A and B. And if you read through the sequence itself, we would identify the right choice as option B. The exhibition committee has been making efforts to make exhibition attractive and useful. This question, while you look at it, appears to be simpler, but could be a challenging aspect if you do not know the basic elements that constitute a sentence. For you to understand quickly, I'll give you some clues so that might be useful for, not only for this question but for other questions as well. The essay, which is not been marked, serves as the clue. So that must be the first segment. And invariably, this becomes the subject of the sentence. Thereby, the subject should take the verb. While you look at the options, option A and option B, they start with PQ. They say like that of the human face. Could be possible. But after segment P, there must be the verb, which is not there. Thereby, option A and option B get eliminated almost within no time. This is one way of linking it. Even otherwise, if you look through the usual approach of us trying to gather clues from the segments, we can be very sure R, S, Q must make a proper sequence. The reason is the essay is a literary form. Obviously, subject, the R segment is the right predicate, which is not easy to define. The word which refers to the essay because its variety. Here, the word its also refers to the essay. So, while you apply this clue by reading it, RSQ segment, there is only one choice with that, with RSQ combination. Thereby, the right choice is option C. The essay is a literary form which is not easy to define because its variety is infinite like that of the human face. This question is slightly different because we have all the words in the question being marked. Thereby, we are clueless. Let's get into the options. We have two options beginning with segment P and we have two other options beginning with segment Q. So let's check whether P or Q should begin. When I was a student, I learned swimming at the age of 15 of class 10 in a government school. While you read it, the immediate clue that you can derive from this question is P, R must be coherent. Therefore, let's go to the options. We will retain the options that have P or combination and eliminate the other two. We have two answer choices which have P or combination. We need to decide which should be the right choice. I learned swimming at the age of 15 when I was a student. The word when makes sense when this being emphasized. I learned swimming at the age of 15 when I was a student makes sense. Thereby, the right choice is option C. I learned swimming at the age of 15 when I was a student of class 10 in a government school. The right choice is option C for this question. I would say this question is indeed an assessment to check your reading ability. Let's try to gather clues. from the question itself this time. Friendship has its place in life. That should be the case. P, yes, must be coherent. Let's try to find which option has P as combination, and we have just only one, and the right choice for this question is option C. Friendship has its place in life, but it cannot override truth and justice. The right choice is option C. This is yet another different question, wherein just by looking at the options you cannot pick any clues. Get into the question and reading the sentence once, you will understand this sentence is specific to those who have hearing problems. Thereby we can say many people with hearing problems should be the proper sequence, and there is only one answer choice beginning with yes. We can conclude answer as option C. Just let's ensure whether this option C sequence makes sense, so that we will read through the same sequence SRQP. Many people with hearing problems suffer persistent noises in the ears ahead, inaudible to others. Answer is option C. This question belongs to deceptive type, wherein it looks simpler but it really checks your true ability in getting the answer. If you give a blind shot or if you just read it casually, you may conclude Q could be the opening segment, which is not true because you have the pronoun its, and its has to be substituted. It cannot precede a noun. Thereby the options beginning with Q segment can be eliminated. And as you read, you could easily understand yes or must be the combination. Unaccustomed to a life of. S R must be the combination. Apply it on the options. You're just only one S R P Q. Unaccustomed to a life of rules and regulations, he cheerfully ignored its demands. The right option is option C for this question. While you read this question, you would find it pretty much simple, and for those questions you can straight away get into the question rather than looking at the answer choices. And as you read the question, you will understand R, Q must be the sequence with its liveliest member away. Applied on the option, we have just only one option with RQ, and therefore the right choice is option B. You can read the sequence to check whether this makes sense. The house was gloomy with its liveliest member away, and that is the answer in fact. This question, though quite easy to understand, may pose a trouble. The reason is this sort of sentence structure is very much unfamiliar to most of the candidates. As I said at the beginning of the session, unless you are into reading, unless you are a habitual reader, picking up sentence structures is a challenging task. And the very requirement for sentence anagram question is a test to check your level of comfort with sentence structures. So what to do while you deal with these sort of challenging sentence structure questions? I'll give you a clue which I emphasized earlier, trying to gather clues from the segments. Here we can easily say Q, yes, must make a sequence. Who has his eyes fixed on the goal? That must be the sequence. If you have a doubt, why does not? Eyes does is not the proper form. Eyes is plural, the verb should be do, it cannot be does, if you have that doubt. So the right sequence is QS. Straight away go to the options, check the number of options which has QS combination, and there's just only one. The right choice is option C. You can read through it. He who has his eyes fixed on the goal does not look at the hurdles on his way. Now the word does, I said, is singular, and this refers to the subject, he. Next question. Well, for this question, let's try to identify a clue from the segments, and as we try, we can understand QS should make sense, because the word pester means to trouble, pestering means troubling. Kept pestering a pretty girl with phone calls makes sense. Straight away go to the options to find how many QS combinations are there. There's just only one. The right choice is option C. As you observe closer, we are taking much less time to get answers for these questions. And my recommendation is, for any of your competitive examination that you appear, if you have questions on anagrams, be it on paragraph anagrams or be it on sentence anagrams, just ensure that you do not miss those questions, because the chances of you answering the questions rightly and with less time is much brighter for this question type, be it paragraph anagram or sentence anagram. So you just ensure that you understand these techniques and you would never miss an anagram question. All the very best.